Greece, 5th century BC. Over the course of 3 decades, a city and its people, led by one man, rise to greatness. This is Athens, the birthplace of democracy. But it is Pericles' city.
Pericles decided that the best way to leave an indelible mark on posterity was to completely alter the skyline and appearance of the center of his city, Athens.
Pericles builds impregnable fortifications. The first Senate house. A complex network of pipes to supply his people with fresh water. The most powerful navy in the ancient world. And temples. One of them, the Parthenon, would be hailed by many as the most perfect building ever completed.
I think he did have a vision for what Athens should be, and seemed to follow that vision for most of his life.
After 2,500 years, the lost world of Pericles can come to life again. Athens, the greatest city on earth. In the 5th century BC, from the hundreds of competing states that made up ancient Greece, one man led his city to greatness. The city was Athens, and Pericles was not a king or prince, but an elected leader. His power came from the people and his own single vision.
The story goes that when Pericles' mother was 8 months pregnant with him, she knew that she was going to have an extraordinary son who was destined for greatness because she had a dream that she gave birth to a lion. And for the ancient Greeks, the lion was always a symbol of leadership.
To be a successful politician and statesman in Greece, he needed to be a military leader, and he needed to be an effective speaker in the assembly. And he was clearly both of those. Pericles not only contributed to Athens becoming a leading power, I think he was the main creator of that power.
Pericles would send out a message to the world that Athens was supreme, the capital of a new empire. He would deliver the message by building. What he planned would be the most costly and ambitious construction campaign undertaken in the Western world. But he needed to fund it. In what some considered an act of blatant theft, he raided the Greek treasury. Money which should have been used to defend all the city-states in the region was diverted to the glorification of his own city. Work soon began on the Parthenon. Built to honor the goddess Athena, it would become the most imitated building in history. An inspiration to engineers and architects. It would take 8 years to build, cost the equivalent of $100 million, and use a staggering 20,000 tons of the finest marble.
The Parthenon is arguably the most influential building in world history. You cannot go into any city in North America or Europe, or indeed most of the world, without finding a 19th century bank facade, parliamentary building facade, or law court building that isn't in some way influenced by the Parthenon.
The Parthenon is a very special building because of the visual impact.
What Pericles built atop the Acropolis was in its time revolutionary. It was at the heart of his plan to reform and remodel his city. Astonishingly ambitious, it was also hugely successful. Pericles changed his world and helped define ours.
Pericles managed to get his dream to come true, which was to build all those beautiful temples on the Acropolis and to have his name on our lips 2,500 years later.
The focus of his building work shifted from the religious sanctuaries to the city below. Like modern-day Athens, it was a busy center of trade. At its heart was the Agora.
The Agora was extremely important. It's a marketplace, it's a political center, it's a social center. It's basically the middle of town in all respects.
Today, the Agora lies in ruins. In the past, it's been attacked by barbarian invaders and built on by private homeowners. But it is possible to recreate what it looked like in Pericles' time, when these 30 acres were the center of the most advanced civilization on Earth. John Camp is a world authority on the building of the Agora. He spent more than 3 decades trying to piece together what it looked like. Within this one plot were busy streets, a collection of temples, a marketplace, and the first ever Senate House.
The Agora in Periclean times would have been quite impressive. It would have been lined with stoas, which are big, long, colonnaded buildings in which you could take shelter from the sun or from the rain, depending on the weather. And it will have been full of people.
Here was built another stunning temple, very different from the Parthenon. Called the Hephaestion, it was dedicated to the craftsman who made Pericles' vision a reality. By making this gesture, Pericles was acknowledging the root of his power, the support of his people.
It's one of the best preserved temples in antiquity, so it's a little hard to see how it goes together. When you come down here, you can see pieces of its virtual twin, which was set.
To build it, workers leveled ground, created artificial terraces, and built into the rock. The building techniques used were tried and tested, but what happened inside the building was revolutionary. This building was the birthplace of democracy.
These walls here are all that remain of the old council chamber, built in about 500 BC. It was a very simple building with mud brick walls, a columnar facade to the south, and a bunch of wooden seats for the councillors to sit on.
A rectangular antechamber led to a large main hall. At its center, a timber roof was supported by 5 columns.
500 Athenians would be allotted every year, not elected, just picked out of a hat, to serve as the senators.
The form of democracy Athenians used was very simple. The council would present the people with the issues for discussion, litigation, taxation, or whether or not to go to war. Then the decisions were made by the people. Votes were cast by dropping a pebble into a terracotta pot. It was expected that at some point every Athenian citizen would serve on the council.
Most democracies today are representative democracies. Athens was a direct democracy. We can compare it as a working system of government to something like a New England town meeting, where everybody in the town goes to the meeting and the decisions are made by everyone.
Pericles' Athenians also developed a way of preventing any one individual from gaining too much power.
Ostracism is something we don't use anymore. It was kind of a reverse election where the Athenians had the opportunity once a year to vote somebody out of office. And the way they did it was by writing the name of the man they thought was a threat to the democracy on a piece of pottery. And the Greek word for that is an ostrakon. So it was essentially being exiled for 10 years by vote of little bits of pottery.
One day, a politician might be enormously popular with the people. The next, his assets could be frozen, and he might be banished from the country for 10 years. It was a punishment Pericles never faced, despite dominating politics in Athens for more than 3 decades.
And concerned themselves a lot with making sure the Athenians had enough. You see here a group of pipelines that have been excavated, many of them used to bring good fresh water into the city, many others used to carry the wastewater away. And literally hundreds of meters have been found crisscrossing the Agora.
Under Pericles, it thrived. The challenge lay in maintaining this success. As Athens grew in wealth and power, it attracted the jealousy of its neighbors. Pericles had to prepare for the day when the city would come under attack. Under the leadership of Pericles, the city of Athens was transformed, and with the support of his people, he governed the city for more than 3 decades.